Hello, and welcome to the Conscious Communion podcast, where we traverse through the inner dwellings of the human experience through conversation. I'm your host, Danae. Join me as we explore the interconnection of creativity and community. Rachel Brooks is the owner of Seeking Space Yoga and Yin Yoga Space in Portland, Oregon. As a business owner, Rachel curates the environment and instructs classes. As a Portland native and a longtime advocate of accessible yoga, Rachel founded spaces in part to open up yoga as an option for workers in Portland's service and sex industries. Through her own experience, Rachel was guided towards the positive impacts yoga can bring to someone working in the service industry. With the fundamental belief that yoga is medicine, Rachel cultivates a space where others can be supported as they are, processing all the highs and lows that we can endure in our human experience. I found Rachel's work through the multifaceted world of social media, and I am so honored to have her here in this space. Welcome, Rachel. Thank you. It's such an honor, especially as a badass businesswoman, like just doing the thing. I so admire your courage and for you having the tenacity to move through adversity, because you opened up your first studio in 2020, correct?
Well, the studio
okay.
2017.
Okay.
Over as sole proprietor in 2020. So similar.
You took the reins in 2020 as the sole proprietor, which that in itself is a huge change. So bravo to you. I would love to share how this desire to becoming a business owner began, where it started.
That's a good question. Or just kind of a good way to lead into a little bit of backstory. But I would say that I didn't realize that I was an entrepreneur like earlier on in life. And I think looking back on my journey of having different jobs and kind of where I landed, I feel like I've always been an entrepreneur and maybe just wasn't aware of it, and also, I would say nowadays it's kind of the age of the entrepreneur. It's like, there's so much more opportunity to just go into business for yourself, and be self-made. And, when I was younger, that wasn't really as much of a thing, So, I don't know that I ever really went out and said, I'm going to own a business, but it was more about just an opportunity that arose. And so the space that I started in 2017, I actually went there as a student, for a few years prior, and just started becoming a student there, went through my teacher training there, and, was being run by a beautiful woman named Trisha. Great heart, really, really good teacher. And I think it was just a bit too much for her. And so after we went through our training and I started teaching there for a while, she made the decision to close the doors. And so that was kind of the opportunity that arose for myself and one of the other students that I had gone through my training with to see if we could do what we could to keep the space there and to be able to, keep the community going there. And so I think it was just a timing thing, really.
That's beautiful. But the stars aligned, everything kind of opened up for you. And that sounds like divine timing, especially being that you did work in the service industry. I would love to share what that transition was like, because that alone in itself, like that's a pretty big change. Sir, it's still the service industry. You're still providing a service, and one that I believe we all desperately could benefit from. So I would love to share what that transition was like and how that inspired you, right? Because even working in the service industry, you're on your feet all day long and you're utilizing your body in some pretty gnarly ways.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was a bartender for 18 years. And before that, I had, done some serving, food service and hostess, things like that. But bartending was the bulk of my service industry career. And it's just complete sensory overload. It's at one point, for a good chunk, I was working in an outdoor venue that we were just on a concrete, like in an emptied out parking lot the whole time. So it's, it's very taxing on the body. And then also just, the way that it's set up too, when you're working nights like that, there's really not anything to do once you get off. If you're getting off anywhere from, midnight to 4 a.m., it really is only just figuring out how you can wind down and kind of process the shift that you just went through, which is part of the beauty of the service industry. One thing that I really love about the service industry, at least from my experience, was you're like in the trenches with these people, the crew that you're working with. And so there's this bond that's created. So everyone's working together. You have each other's back. You're going through it. And so oftentimes, after shift, it's just being able to like chat with each other, process, maybe have a drink, It's like sometimes like that's all you want is just, I need a drink after that. Like that was crazy. And so yeah, that was just kind of that's the atmosphere that I was in, at least. And I can't speak for everybody's experience, but I know it's a similar one for a lot of people that work in the industry. And so I think I just got to a point after a long period of time, after, 18 years of that same routine, that I was starting to just feel the toll. Like I had, my capacity for managing people became a lot smaller. My reactivity became a lot larger. And so, and then just the physical part of it, just feeling, just completely worn out, burnt out. And so that's where I kind of started searching. And I hadn't really ever had any fitness. Like my family wasn't really big on fitness. That wasn't something that we were taught. I wasn't really in, tried some sports here and there, but nothing really stuck. And so, physical, fitness in any way, shape or form wasn't really something that I was taught. And so it was, something that I was like, I didn't really know exactly what it is that I was looking for, but I was looking for something different, something that was more nourishing. And, so that's when I kind of started to search around and thought about gyms, thought about, different things, and then kind of landed on, well, I think like maybe yoga would be something that would kind of keep me engaged mentally, but also move and not be too crazy and too hard on the body. And that's kind of where that started. And then I ended up going to a space regularly, and it was, the same thing that we all go through when we first start something new, just completely lost, had no idea what to do. But slowly but surely, like started, getting more into the rhythm of it and becoming a part of the community and feeling those effects trickle into my sleep and my mentality and everything. So, yeah. And that's when I went through the 200 hour, started teaching. I was still in the industry for, the first 3 years of the business that I started. So that was a whole, like, just going on two completely different ends of the spectrum. But it was a beautiful journey. I wouldn't take it back, but yeah, it was definitely quite a ride.
A juggling act for sure, especially to be working in the dualistic nature of both worlds. Like that's a lot, but what a gift, because I'm sure that was able to provide you with a bit of a foundation for what you were looking to create in community. And as you created the foundation and the fundamental pieces to your business, right?
Right. Yeah. And I think, that's, I think that's, kind of, a theme that keeps kind of coming back is, and what I, notice with other people too, when I come across other people who are on their journey of finding things. But it's like, when you see that there's a need for something, or if you're looking for something and you can't find it for yourself, that's where it's like, can't say that it's always like, that's the thing that you need to go for, but like a lot of times it is, and so when I was still in the industry working, those late hours and then starting on my yoga journey, a lot of times classes were at 9:30 in the morning. I went to bed at 5. Like, there's no way. So just things like that, like starting to see that there was like something that I could have used that I was missing. And then once I started feeling, more of the benefits, the lifestyle, and just the overall, like I think that there was a hopelessness there before, and starting to have that melt away and starting to feel like, oh my, I'm actually really happy. Like this feels really good. And it was something that I hadn't felt before. And then of course, wanting to like share that with everybody, so.
Yeah, when passion meets purpose, it's like that's when the rubber meets the road. And I think you hit the nail on the head. I think so often it is really our purpose when we get to find something that speaks volumes for us, but there's a gap. There's something that's not necessarily available in the market or the industry yet. And so I love to hear that you abided by what was calling you forth to just, stay curious. And even through you sharing about working in the service industry and working, in a yoga studio, like even in the very beginning, I just hear community coming back up. And that seems like it's a big part of your heart and what calls you into this work. And so I would love to share just a little bit about what the process was like for you to initiate yourself into creating this community that you've created, now 2 communities, now 2 spaces, and what that looked like for you in the very beginning stage. Because there's some things you have to move through, right? As a business owner and as an entrepreneur, some scary, sticky things. So if you would share some of that, I would love it.
Yeah. Well, I would say like in the very beginning, it was pretty much like, okay, we're going to, figure out how to kind of salvage and try to keep everything together in this space that, I felt like I had grown up in. It felt like, that was such a transformative time for me that, it was so sacred and special. And then, so it was just kind of more of the mode of like, okay, how can we make this work and figure it out so that we can also, keep this place as a service for other people. And then, the first year or so was, just, I would say utter chaos. There was, we didn't have capital. It was just like, I've got this much, you've got this much, let's throw it in here. We'll borrow a little bit from a friend. And like, that it was literally that. There was no, not a real big financial plan or business plan, involved. And so, there was a need for it just to be, a lot of it was just our sweat equity, really just us teaching the classes, doing that. And, we had, space to have like 1 or 2 other teachers tops, there with us on this. So a lot of that was just this consistent, like just building and, doing whatever we could to like get it rolling. And surprisingly, we didn't actually, retain as much of the community that was there before as I thought we would, which is cool because there's a bunch, there's a lot of new growth and new people coming in. But yeah, I was surprised. I mean, there's some, but not as much as I would have thought with the turnover because we really opened it up about 3 months after it had closed down with our space and our business. But once there started, we got things rolling, people were coming through the doors, people were finding out about us, then, it created a little bit more space for the intentionality part of it. And so it felt, after about 1.5 years is where we started to kind of have some of that space of being able to, not only was I working in the industry, but I also had like a part-time, almost full-time job at a mortgage company too. It was just like it was crazy. I was all over the place. And, so, so being able to like let go of some of those things. And there's that point that I think almost any small business owner reaches where it's like, whether, you're starting and you have to have some means coming in the beginning, and whether that's a job that you have or, another startup, whatever it is, but there's something in the beginning that has to at least sustain you until your business actually takes off. Right. And so, it was definitely a point where it's like, okay, it's really scary and I don't know how it's going to go, but I'm going to take the step, take the leap and just like go all in and just have faith, And so there was that point, which was very scary, but it turned out really well. It went well. It worked out, which was really cool. And then there was space to start being more intentional, like I mentioned. So once I took over in 2020, so, pandemic happened. We were going into, I can't even imagine any other business going through the same thing. But like if they were, we were just turning 3 or like 2.5 when the pandemic started. And so that's supposed to be like your best year as a business. And it was. I mean, it was what we, we had a foundation we were building, and it was great. And then the pandemic. And so there was a whole process there of, we went completely dark for 2 weeks trying to figure out how to, like, people who had never done any virtual, any video, at nothing like that, trying to figure that out and stay connected with the community. And so once we got that figured out, slowly but surely, started to be able to figure out ways to keep everyone together and connected. But that has to be one of the hardest things I've ever experienced and done. And then on top of that, taking over as sole proprietor too is huge and scary and but also it felt really good too. It felt good too, because I had this, passion and this passion project and purpose that I felt like I was following, and that was just there in me. And so it also opened up an opportunity for me to really go all in on that specific, and so I think everything has a season. And I think that I am so grateful that I had someone to start the business with, because working and forging systems from the beginning and all that is just, it's so much. So that was a really good way of doing it. And then being able to take over as sole proprietor and really just go all in on the mission was like just another blessing. So
that's so incredible to hear. And just to think about, I mean, paperwork alone for becoming a sole proprietor in business that's a lot. That's a lot. And to undertake that kind of adversity amidst what everyone was going through, because while we were all going through something, we were each as individuals also moving through our own bag of whatever it was. So I love to hear that you were moving through all the things and still creating a business and creating this, incredible space and continuing to like cultivate it in a new way, because you really had to think on your feet, right?
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of it was, I mean, honestly, just like throwing something at the wall to see what sticks. Like at that point, you just realize you literally have nothing to lose like that. And so that's one thing that I would say it's definitely stuck coming out of the pandemic, and that it, taught me, because, I can be an overthinker at times. And sometimes, what they say, analysis that brings you into paralysis or whatever. Sometimes overthinking it so much that I don't take action, and that is gone. It is really just like, oh, you don't have anything to lose. Just try it, see it, see what happens. And a lot of things really worked out and did well. And so that was really cool to see too. And so that definitely is something I carry with me from that period of like, just that, fearlessness of like making it work. It's going to work. It's going to be okay. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. And failing, that's okay. All of that. Yeah.
1,000%. Yeah. I think that's a good word. I think that's helpful for everyone to hear, because I'm in the firm belief that we are all creators to some capacity. It's just about uncovering what that looks like for each individual. But the fear part gets in the way. It's exactly what you said, the analysis paralysis, and how that can really stop us from achieving anything, but especially our dreams, because those are the things that feel so near and dear to us. So to hear that you were creatively and consciously like pursuing your curious like thoughts and like whatever was kind of coming through is really inspiring. I think it's motivating to hear that, that someone who once was dealing with that analysis paralysis, like move through that in a positive way. And look at you now, you've opened up a second space.
Yeah. And it was, I'm very, very grateful to, to be able to have, navigated the pandemic. I think I mentioned this to you before when we spoke, but like, I'm still processing little pieces of it at a time, because it was a lot, and it was, years. And so it's like, that's a lot. And so, I still take time to be like, to reflect and be like, holy shit, excuse my language, but holy shit, like that was, wow. I think it's important to reflect on that and to also, and just to find that place of gratitude for like, wow, we're here and we did this, and then, and it was also really cool to, once we started, it was about December of, what year are we in? December 22 or no, December 21 is when it felt like, okay, we've got our foundation starting to come back. We're still not out of the woods, but, things are starting to feel okay and somewhat stable again. And not as much threat of being, closed down or any of that. And so, there's a whole journey with from the time that we opened up in 17, I started teaching 3 and 4 a.m. classes because this was, I was still bartending. So for me, it was getting off work and going to the studio. Wow. And so that journey, besides just building, the business, the yoga studio, the, more regular schedule, memberships, all those things, it was, a journey of what is this going to look like? How am I going to be able to service the community in the way that I want and in a way that is sustainable for them? And so, teaching 3 and 4 a.m. classes, a couple of the mornings at the studio, coming from bartending and coming there and bringing some of the staff with me that I worked with that night with me to the studio. So that's kind of where it started. And that was when I had my 200-hour vinyasa training. I'd had a couple, like a restorative training and, did some gathering of different continuing ed courses, but predominantly vinyasa. And so I was teaching, a gentle vinyasa style at that time. Well, some of the feedback that I was getting from the students that were coming was more that it was, giving them a little bit of a burst of energy. And maybe so it was like there was enough movement to start, blood flow and getting it, just to where it was still relaxing and everything, but just enough energy. And that was the opposite of what I was wanting to be able to do. I want to be able to have our nervous systems calibrate and come into rest and digest after a shift. And so I heard about 100-hour yin training by Sarasvati Hewitt. And that was, I think that was like 19 or 20 is when probably 2019, I think is when, towards the end of 19 is when I did that training. And that's where I started, like, once I started doing the training and feeling yin in my own body and feeling the effects of it, that was like, not that I regret the path that I took. I think yoga meets us wherever we're at, where we need it to meet us at the time. And I met yin in the very beginning. I don't know. I probably would have maybe not come back. I'd have been like, why are we just laying here on the floor? And so I think I needed to find the more active yoga at that time because I was looking for a little bit of a workout and I was, really, really activated. And so, but once I found yin, I felt it in my body and I had realized that was really what I needed the most. And so that was, part of the, picking up nuggets on the journey to like figure out how to be able to facilitate the yoga classes for the service industry, not just late night, but like the style, the space, the container that held for them. And so that was a huge, huge part of it, was finding yin and getting certified in yin. And then from there, it was more of the logistics, just figuring out, like we're in Southwest, seeking spaces in Southwest on Barber. And I think that too, when I went into this, because, it felt natural on my journey of, what I was seeking, what I was needing. I didn't think about how much of an ask it would be for people to, maybe change what they'd been doing for years. And when, the entire time that you've been in the industry, there's been nothing to do, from 2 to 4 a.m. or at late night. It takes a while for it to like, for people to understand or to have their brain kind of wrap around, oh, there is something different to do. And even to have the desire to do something different sometimes, and so one of those, a hindrance to that could be like, you just want to I think in general, holding a space for people to come and be able to take care of themselves. Like you want to remove obstacles that make it hard, harder for them. And so one of the things that I realized was kind of a hindrance was the location, not being central enough, not being easy enough to get to. And so that was where, once things felt like we were kind of coming out of the danger zone of the pandemic, that I was able to actually start exploring a way to find a more central location that would be kind of in the heart of the city to be able to just be more accessible.
That's incredible. Yin is my absolute hands down favorite style of yoga. I found yoga through vinyasa, and that was where I was initiated, and same thing, met me for the time that it met me, and I learned so much about myself through that process. But now I hardly even find any interest in a vinyasa class just because my nervous system needs to rest and digest. I'm living up here and I work out in other ways. So it's I need to just chill.
Yeah.
And it's just yummy. Even when you started sharing about yin, I felt a little activation behind my heart center, and my body was oh yes, full body yes. And for you to be doing that for these people who have worked long shifts and who are tired and who get another opportunity to do something different. I think I worked in the service industry for a very brief amount of time, but the desire is to go out after, or to have a drink, or to, I don't know, do something maybe that isn't super supportive for your nervous system. So to have another opportunity or a different path to traverse through is incredible. And so for you to open that door for folks, I'm sure so many people are so grateful.
Yeah, I think, it's definitely something that I went into knowing that it was going to be. It's this is a long game. This is and it's not just, it's going to take a lot. There's going to be, and there already is, there's stirrings. I think even, it was probably 3 years ago, or maybe right before the pandemic, there was a program that I believe it was Olympia Provisions, had come up with one of their head chefs who was sober. And it was at the end of shift, if you could decide to not get your shift drink and get a token. And then there was partnerships with different businesses for you could gather these tokens instead, and then, go get a massage or whatever it was. And so there is a stirring, there's a need, there's an awareness that's starting to happen within the community of just this isn't sustainable. It's not, and so things have to be different. They have to change. There has to be more available for us. And so I am looking forward to what that turns into and what it looks like. And it's just going to take more people just creating those spaces, creating that availability. And so I'm really excited for where it goes. But I definitely went into it knowing that this is something that's going to take a while. And I'm just excited to be on the journey and to, get feedback. Right now, this is a lot of, I do late night classes on Monday and then Thursday and Friday at the space. So we've got the dedicated space, which is huge. The consistency is huge. And so right now it's kind of just, listening to the people who are coming through the doors. What is it that you need? What other days work? What times? Will be more helpful about the things okay, you have a way to take care of your body, but also nourishment, nutrients at night. What does that look like? How do you get a warm, healthy meal? And I would love to be able to this big dream would be to be able to have a full on health center, whatever is available, cupping, acupuncture, massage, all those things, for people to be able to take care of themselves at whatever time they need it, and whatever time they can. So.
Really just opening yourself up to the community. And again, that just seems like it's such a big piece to the puzzle for you. And what calls you to this work is really answering the call of the community and being open to hearing what people need and what people desire. And I'm curious, because you're holding the space, you're the business owner, and because you are also instructing the classes, how do those two things marry with one another so that you can answer the calls of your community?
That's good. That's a good question. I mean, I think part of it is like, community is like being with each other, being together, connection. That's huge. And I think that is something like, that is a regular practice that I, like part of the responsibility that I have, is taking care of myself, self-care, my own personal practice, which has looked so different over so many different stages of my journey in business and journey as a yogi too. And so I think just really trying to make sure that I'm practicing self-care. I'm in my practice in some way, shape, or form so that I can have that space to continue to serve and be in connection. I think that's especially, I'm a bit introverted, so that can also be a bit of a challenge. So just making sure that I have that space to recharge, space to stay connected to myself, and true to myself. And then, if it's just, I guess, a continuing curiosity and also just knowing that, like, yeah, business owner, instructor, great. But like, I'm learning from everybody who's in front of me in my classes. Like, they're my teachers too. So just having that, always curious, always open to new thoughts, new ideas, perspectives. That's huge. So that there's never like, it's just knowing that I am and can always learn from the people who are in my community, around me, in front of me. And always that you're just always a student.
So good. Yes. Always a student. That is like forever a mantra. I feel like when I'm always questioning folks who think that they've learned enough, like, I don't trust you. If you feel like you're not forever a student, then yeah, because we're never going to stop learning. And so for you to say that, I just think is a really incredible representation of who you are as, one, a space holder, and two, as just someone who is cultivating community where it gets to be regenerative and reciprocal. Mm-hmm. Like that's what it gets to be. And I am curious to hear more about your self-care practices, because that is such an important piece to service, whatever it may be. Yeah. We have to take care of ourselves if we are giving back in some fashion, some form, some way. So what does that look like for you, and how do you create that sacred space for yourself?
That's funny. Yeah, I just think, for the longest time, my idea, which I think is very, a lot of people have the same idea too, that self-care needs to be like this luxurious bubble bath and like 90-minute massage and whatever. And it's like, okay, but like, what are we really going to be able to do? Like, what does that actually look like? What's realistic and sustainable? And those things are all great. I love, like, Loyally is one of my favorite places to go. And that's like a once every month or once couple of months I get to go to be in the sauna and just breathe in essential oils and soak my feet sometimes. So that's amazing. Love that. What does my actual regular self-care look like? Sometimes it's drinking water, like drinking enough water and hydrating. Sometimes it's naps. I love naps. I'm a good napper. I could take a good nap. There's some people, like my partner, for example, is the worst. Like, if he naps, it's like, it's over. It's like 4 hours and now like the day is gone. But like, there's this, I'm like perfecting my naps and figuring out the perfect time frame for me to feel refreshed after I sleep, or whatever. So I'm very, like, when it comes to it, just more like practical, like what can I do to nourish my body a little bit today? Boundaries. That's a huge, huge part of my self-care, is setting boundaries around when and where I'm available for business things, what platforms I'm available for them on. that's huge. Like, it's not profound by any means, but I mean, that's real. That's what it is really just like the boundaries, making sure that I'm, it is a responsibility. And I think that I've learned that through the different phases of compression that I felt as a business owner, as an instructor, things like that. Like it's a responsibility, like, because, I'm so grateful to be in the position that I'm in, but I do have a responsibility to be able to, to uphold that. And so, I think part of being a good leader and a good teacher is really actually practicing what you preach. And so, yeah, that's part of it. But yeah, really just setting boundaries and drinking water and taking naps.
I love it. I love it. And the boundaries piece, I think, especially because people frame boundaries or like have this idea of boundaries, and it can look very different for everyone. But for what you said, it's really about sharing your energy and knowing where you should share your energy and where you shouldn't.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important piece to just doing. I mean, you're doing a lot, right? You have 2 spaces that you're managing. And so managing your own energy and what kind of information you're allowing in is really vital to just staying healthy in your mind, body, and spirit, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's huge. And I feel like I'm always looking for, a way to relay that in the most kind and compassionate way possible, without having it feel like, I'm being closed off, or, yeah, I don't know. Like, and some of it is maybe not worrying so much about, how it comes off to the other person, but just really, I do hope that by me setting those boundaries, that also empowers others to do the same. And so, yeah, it's a practice. It's a forever practice. And it changes, So.
Yeah. And I think I have to say this because this is a rescheduled conversation, and I really felt safe to reschedule our conversation. And so you already are setting that energetic boundary and that intention, and it was felt. So I think that I just feel like that should be shared because that shows the integrity and the integrity of your practice to set boundaries and also create space is felt. Yeah. So yeah, of course, because for me in that moment, I realized I wasn't creating a safe space for me and my boundaries. Mm-hmm. And so having you as a mirror and feeling the safety that you were providing was able to permission me into saying, okay, you know what, I am going to take this boundary and I'm going to allow myself to just appreciate it,
Yeah. I love that. That's great.
Well, especially, yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's, as a leader, that's your gift. That's the gift to initiate people into that. And it's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I love hearing that it sounds like you're an introverted extrovert because you are so eloquent with how you share and how you speak and how you just show up in space. So what has that been like for you as a business owner to be an introvert and then also manage your business? Because you have to be on in certain ways, but also then cultivate this, not appearance, because I hate that, but also it's yeah, you have to be a business owner. So in the midst of being an introvert, how do you hold both things and let the two exist?
That is also a forever practice. But it just kind of comes back to just knowing what I have capacity for. Self check-ins. Me and my therapist like to call them self check-ins before I walk into the space. That's a huge part of where am I at mentally and emotionally, and just doing a quick check-in with myself before I enter the studio, because that is where, it is. as a teacher, before you teach class, all those things. It is, like I don't know the word that feels, proper for it. It's not performance, but in a way it is. And that, but that's also like, that's what I've been doing in the service industry too. You put on a show in a way, doesn't mean that it's not genuine or, real, but it's part of it. And so, just making sure that I am giving myself space to recharge after, being in space with others, after facilitating, and checking in prior. Like, even as a teacher, and this is like, I've been teaching, I don't know, how long have I been teaching? About like 6 years now. Hasn't been too crazy long, but I've been teaching for 6 years, and I still, like, I'll tell this to newer teachers too that are starting, like, I still get anxious before every class that I teach. That does not necessarily go away, it gets easier. And once you're in there, you're like, oh yeah, this is familiar. It feels good. I know this, but, so yeah, like that's part of just the introverted me, and that's okay. And it just gets easier to navigate. And then, just leaning into who I am more, and just holding space for myself more for that, having grace with myself. Mm-hmm. That was one thing I wanted to, just add to the point that you made, that we were just going over, as far as like the rescheduling thing, or, having the space around boundaries and stuff like that, but also just having the grace with ourselves. Like that was a struggle for me too, for a long time, of not wanting to reschedule anything, always wanted to be a person of my word, and making sure that if I set something, that I'm going to be there. And that's great to strive for. But at the same time, like, it's not real either. Like, we really do need to honor where we're at that day. And it's doing a disservice almost to others to continue with things when we're not there, or at least, so just want to add on that.
No, I'm glad that you did, because grace is that is one of the biggest pieces that I've learned amidst my journey, is because I didn't have grace for myself for so long. I think so many of us have a hard time getting there to even know what that looks like for ourselves, and to permission ourselves to feel whatever feels uncomfortable, and to just allow it to be, and not try to fix it, and just allow it to be. That's why yin is so yummy, because you actually get to sit with like what feels really uncomfortable. Yeah. Like shoelace pose, every time it's just pain, because my hips are tight. And so it's like, okay, this is like, the pain is the portal. And the longer you get to like really lean into it, it's good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny that you mentioned that. I've been thinking about like a nemesis class, because like my students know that there's like these like 4 nemesis postures that I'm like, they're the ones that are the most challenging that I've seen for most bodies. Shoelace is one of them. Absolutely. And so it's just, but that's the good stuff. That's the stuff that's where the growth happens, and so it's really cool.
So good. Yeah. See, and even that ingenuity that it takes to, you mentioned earlier about the curiosity and the creativity, like being bred from the curiosity. And really, it sounds like that's been so much a part of your trajectory, and the way that you've created new parameters for yourself to be a business owner that's also like creating new strides. Like, you get to be the one setting the path and the tone for yourself, and you're doing it in a new way that maybe old programs and like old capitalist structures maybe haven't done things in the past that way. So like, yeah.
That's something that like, it's really cool to be able to, be in that creative flow of like, just, I don't know. That's the best way I can describe it. And I know you know what I'm speaking of, but like feeling like you're connected, and that you're just kind of a vessel in a way. But also, working within a capitalist society and working within structures, and also not having a template for like how to do things, because it is different. That's something that I've been really trying to like, I think that that might be maybe a next step for me, or you know, another way of connecting with people is once I can kind of get through, you know, working through what I'm working through and creating what I'm creating, like, how do I then, you know, empower others to get into that flow when there is no real groundwork to like go off of, you know? So that's something that I'm staying curious about it. I'm continuing to make sure that I'm staying connected to what my, you know, what my passion is and what I know to be true. And then hopefully I can then kind of be able to empower others to be able to like sit in that too. Cause it can be intimidating. It can be really like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? When you don't have any examples, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's clear to me, if I can just be someone who is a mirror to you and like reflecting back what I'm seeing, you really are someone that does set that energetic tone well. Like you hold the space well. It's exactly what I was referencing when I felt safe to reschedule, because I don't feel safe, just gonna make it clear, I don't feel safe to reschedule with everyone. You know, like there's been like some like friction where I'm like, I don't want to text this person or message this person and reschedule. And so for that alone, that gets to permission as you continue to create new courses and as you continue to create new structures and kind of break down the old paradigms, like that will be the permission in itself to create new constructs and how people can lean into their own creative ability to just be open vessels and conduits, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Because
that's felt in yoga spaces, like especially because you're taking that time to be intimate with yourself. Mm-hmm. And so as a space holder, if that's your dream, if that's your foundation and that's your heart, it'll be felt in that space for sure.
Thank you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. Of course. I'm curious and excited to see where that leads and like how it evolves, because these ideas that you're coming up with, you know, they've come to fruition, and I don't doubt that won't come to fruition. I know that it will, and I'm excited to see how it comes forth.
Me too. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I would love to hear what feels super ever present for you in the here and now as like a business owner and as an entrepreneur. Like what feels sticky, what has been challenging for you, and you know, because we kind of are like not leaving, but you mentioned earlier that you're still feeling some of the residual nature of like the pandemic, right? So like, what has it been like coming out of that adversity and like moving into this new rhythm and feeling into a new flow?
I mean, I think that one thing that I notice, that I appreciate that happened, during the really like deep harder times in the pandemic, was, you know, I think that it brought us to a place where we needed each other. And so, and when I'm speaking, the we that I'm speaking of is like the other studio owners in a way. Like there was never really, I remember in the first couple years of starting the studio, myself and my former business partner had reached out to a couple different places because we were just like, we don't know what to do. We don't know how to do things. You know, how do you deal with certain, you know, contractor stuff? How do you, you know, like, what do you do for this with memberships or students or whatever? So just like kind of like trying to figure it out and reaching out to try to see if anybody was willing to share information, and receiving nothing back. And that was kind of, and who knows, like, I can only imagine that, you know, people are busy. Maybe it went to their junk box. I don't know. But maybe also it was just more of that, you know, like holding, you know, things closely as out of a lack mindset, or, you know, competition in some way or whatever. So maybe that's what it was. But when we were going through the pandemic, it was like everything was stripped away. It's just like, we have to lean on each other. Like, and so there was, sharing of resources, sharing of information, what software are you using for this? How are you, doing the Zoom classes, all these things. And so that was really cool to see. And there's some relationships that were cultivated during that time that I still have today. So that feels really good. And also just to know that, I don't know that, I'm not going to say that we won't ever, that's always going to be there, or the mentality, but I do think that this newer, I guess there's kind of a newer, I don't know what generation is the word that's coming to mind, but that's not actually what I mean. But I feel like the industry here, at least in Portland, it's changing, and there is some lasting effect that has happened from the pandemic, and some things have fallen off and new things are coming up and being born. And so I think that there is a shift that's happening. And I'm hoping that will be, embracing each other more and supporting each other more and collaborating more. And I think that is what's happening. I'm feeling that more. So that's been really cool. Entrepreneurship, solopreneurship, all of that can be really, really isolating. And that's something that I still experience today, not based off of just being busy and being so like sometimes you're just at stages where you're just, all you can do is just focus on and in the business, and that's just part of it. And then, at some point you hopefully have some space to pull up out of it a little bit and be able to go see other people's faces and go visit other places and whatever. But yeah, I really have just been looking for ways to, just knowing how I've felt. Same thing. It was like, if there's something that I'm needing, somebody else probably needs that too. And so figuring out ways to collaborate, get together, even if it's just a support call once a month or whatever it is, getting in touch and in communication and community with other business owners who might be going through the same thing, is kind of just what I've been really leaning into. So, yeah.
That's beautiful. That in itself is certainly creating a new paradigm, especially from all that we've known in the past. I think competition in itself, it's like that we felt that in business, yes, and just with people. Like it, and I too have felt that shift in a lot of ways. That like either isn't or it is. And it's super clear that's where we get to just like abide by the boundaries that are almost being set for us. Like it's very clear energetically, like what is meant for us when we continue to pursue what feels in alignment and what doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's too, just, becoming, just continuing to be aware of like, when those things, I feel like those feelings, I mean, I've 100% felt, some of that, like, especially coming out of the pandemic, some of that, like, just stress or, worried about keeping things close to me because I'm afraid that they're going to go away again or whatever it is. Like we all struggle with those things. And it's designed for us to feel that way, and so just remembering to just keep, staying connected, coming back and just observing the things that come up and trying to just work through those. But that's also a practice, is just, realizing that the system that we're in is that those feelings are what it cultivates. And so trying to really break out of that. And, even just like something that someone in my sphere, there's a couple of women who do like some healing work, Reiki and sound healing and stuff like that. But they do like a workshop for like healing the sister wound, which is like a huge thing, I think. And so that's another thing, like with, especially specifically to those who identify as female, some of that like competition that happens there too. And so just healing those wounds and just being open and receiving and, becoming aware of some of those things that are coming up. So.
I love that. Antha.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sweet Antha. Yeah. I adore her. Yes. It's the sister wound of that competition piece it has run deep for me in my own experience. So I feel you. Like I feel you in the, like, it's uncomfortable, and it can be. And I've really felt as of late moving through those, even with friendships, and those, like, navigating the doing of a new way, like recreating it, but how it makes sense for us, like, and being honest and holding each other rather than like pushing each other away when those feelings come up. And it can be so uncomfortable because it's so nuanced. Like, we haven't been practicing it because we've been taught not to.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So beautiful. Can you share where people can find you, how they can work with you, and just all the things so that they can be pointed in the right direction to find your work and your studios?
Yeah. So, Seeking Space is on Barber in Southwest. And seekingspaceyoga.com is where you can look at the schedule that has the full range of all the stuff. So we go from yin and restorative to, like, you've got weights and cardio. So there's the full range of classes there, heated and non-heated. Lots of fun events too that we do. And then Yin Yoga Space is on 7th and Cooch in Central East Side. And that is our dedicated Yin Yoga studio. And yinyogaspace.com website there, also Instagram at Yin Yoga Space. And that is where we hold SIN Yin, which is our late night program. That's a donation-based program. And we are there on Mondays right now. We do 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. And then Thursday and Friday, we do 11 p.m. to 4 a.m. And it's an open format. So you just come in whenever you can within that 5-hour window, and we guide whoever's in the room. And it's been such a special space. So cool. And that time, like that is my favorite time of, I guess, night or morning, that, like 3 and 4 a.m. It's just like, so it feels sacred. It's just so quiet, and it feels so special to be not only just like awake during that time, but also to be in community with others in that time, in that very quiet, like sacred time. It just feels really good.
I bet. That's like witching hour. I feel like that's when, like, I get those like crazy ass dreams. Like, if I fall back asleep, or if normally I wake up around 3, like every 2 to 3 every morning to go to the restroom, and I'm like getting these like downloads, and I'm like, whoa. So I can't imagine doing yoga and community with people. Wow, what a portal that must be. And I love that it's donation based. That's so beautiful. And I felt that one in my body as well. Just you saying that it's an open format, that people get to come when feels right for them. That's really juicy.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one final question. Okay. For what you've experienced, and through, whether it be an entrepreneur, like you as an entrepreneur, or you just in your life, what slice of wisdom, or what that feels good for you to share, would you like to share with those listening?
These ones always get me. I'm like, nuggets. I have like, this same thing we'll keep coming back to is, if you are looking for something that you cannot find, that is a really good indicator that it needs to be created. So please lean into that, whether it's you or someone else that wants to facilitate it, but that's huge. And then also just not changing things too quickly, in the beginning stages. Sometimes, especially if you're excited and you want to make tweaks or whatever, I've just found that just like starting the thing, letting it be there, and seeing what comes, and not needing to change or adjust things too quickly. And I had something, and then I forgot. I had something else. What was it? I don't know. Maybe it'll come to me. I'll text you.
Yeah, no, that in itself is so good. I think I appreciate what you said, and it was a good word for me. So thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. And thank you for being a curator of 2 incredible spaces where people get to be fed really,
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate you, and I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.
Okay, you too.
Thank you. Bye. Hey there, it's Danae again. Just wanted to say thank you for sharing your time and energy with me. If this podcast resonates, please like, subscribe, follow, and share if you're willing. Reviews help too, so if you're feeling the vibe, please leave a review where you can. Sending all the love. Peace.